These are Reddit's craziest wedding stories, and the last one I'm going to show you is literally the most upvoted wedding post of all time. Do not miss it. The 3 p.m. wedding that started at 6:30 p.m. and somehow got worse from there. I will never forget it. So, my then boyfriend, now husband, was invited to a wedding, and the bride insisted the entire bridal party arrive sharp at 10:30 a.m., even though the ceremony was scheduled for 3 p.m. He shows up, parks, and crickets. He literally sat in his car until noon when the bridal party slowly started showing up. The groom, his brother, didn't get there until almost 1 p.m. and he was already drunk. The bride was late too because of hair and makeup delays. I got there at around 2:30 p.m. and immediately ran into chaos with the seating chart. It was a mess. I and several other people kept getting moved around because we were at the wrong tables. The dress code? Non-existent. People wore tuxes, crop tops, ripped jeans, Jordans, flip-flops, white dresses, white suits, leggings, club dresses, and miniskirts. Someone next to me whispered they couldn't tell if we were at a wedding, a nightclub, a barbecue, or a funeral, and honestly, same. I'm sorry, but out of all of those, flip-flops at a wedding, that is unreal. I mean, unless you're at the beach, but even still. By 3:30 p.m, my boyfriend comes out like, everything's behind schedule. You don't say, lol. The wedding didn't actually start until 6:30 p.m, and I honestly think it only happened then because apparently the pastor was threatening to leave. Let me remind you, the original start time was 3 p.m. There were zero announcements about the delays or when things would start. I only knew anything because my boyfriend was texting me. People were sprinting back in from the lobby while the bridal party was already walking down the aisle. Since they used the reception hall as the ceremony space, we were already at our dinner tables. And the room was huge, so no one past the first few tables could hear a thing. There were no microphones, and people were just talking over everything and snapping pictures with loud flashes. My boyfriend said it wasn't even worth hearing anyway, because his brother was drunk and slurring the whole time. Oh gosh. The ceremony ended at 6:55 p.m. No cocktail hour, no appetizers, just a cash bar which was charging $10 for beer and $20 for cocktails. People started leaving to grab food and alcohol. One table ordered pizza, others brought in tacos and BK, and plenty of folks were just drinking straight from bottles they picked up from the liquor store. Wow. The bride and groom came in at around 8:30ish, again with no announcement. They had to walk out and come back in just to try and get the bridal party entrance right. The song kept skipping and people were walking in and out and standing up, completely blocking the view for others. Dinner didn't start until about 9 p.m. and it was so slow and chaotic. There was also no announcement. My boyfriend's table had already finished eating by the time mine got a bread roll. I didn't get my food until 9:45 p.m. due to mix-ups with other tables, and we were served just water. Oh, and there was no cake, just melted ice cream soup. I was told dinner was supposed to have been served at 5:30 p.m, so that explains the cold food and melted ice cream. We quietly left at 10 p.m. No dancing, no toasts, nothing. And good thing we left when we did, because they only had the venue until 10 p.m. So at around 10:15ish, they were being kicked out. So anyone still there basically became part of the cleanup crew. I then told my boyfriend that before we go to another one of his family weddings, I need to know all the logistics in advance. That sounds like an absolute nightmare. Wow, what a start to the episode, and it's hard not to agree with the top comment that this sounds like a Sims wedding more than an in real life one. Now, if you thought that was crazy, just wait until the last post in this episode. Remember, we've got the most upvoted crazy wedding story on Reddit of all time to come. But what I've just read there is ridiculous. Like, how can you have a wedding that is that unorganized? And I completely understand, by the way, why the food was a complete mess. Because the actual ceremony itself took place hours after it was supposed to, the groom was drunk, etc. I don't really blame the venue at all. This is all on the groom especially, but also on the bride. Hey, maybe they just didn't really care about it and were like, oh, we've got to have a wedding because it's tradition, but let's just go with the flow and see what happens. And it led to this monstrosity. Now, someone asked in the comments, is the couple still together? And Opie replied saying, yes, they are. And the bride / my sister-in-law wanted to be my wedding coordinator. I'd like to add that every event since then has always been a disaster, with either food being nasty or significant delays. We now go 2 hours late for any event they have, and we're still on time. We eat early, and I put snacks in my purse. Don't even get me started on their gender reveal. I love them, but they're chaotic and they're perfect for each other. Maybe that explains the wedding entirely. And you know what? Maybe like a really scheduled wedding wouldn't have been the right one for them. This sounds perfect. Now for our next wedding disaster story, and how about this for a title? My wedding was a total disaster. Now this was posted just a week ago at the time of recording. My wedding was yesterday, and it was an absolute nightmare from start to finish. In no particular order. I fractured my knee the night before, and I had to be on crutches and was in huge pain the whole night, minus 1,000 out of 10. DIY brides, please take note to not stand on rickety chairs when hanging decor. I'm a huge idiot and only have myself to blame, but boy it sucked. I won't be walking for a while. That is shockingly bad, wow. I for some reason thought it would be a good idea to choose an off-the-shoulder, strapless, deep plunging neckline. I am a 34 double F. It was not a good idea, and I was basically flashing everyone all night, minus 999 out of 10. I was so self-conscious and uncomfortable the whole time. I could see people sweating, trying not to glance down whenever they were talking to me. I looked like a Victorian prostitute. I'm so embarrassed. I'm honestly dreading seeing the photos. My face was also very swollen, and my eyes were puffy from tiredness and crying, and I had a terrible double chin. Okay, not a great start to this one. Next, the weather was biblical. Gale force winds and torrential rain, and the venue was a barn in a field. Everyone was freezing, and going outside to the toilets was like taking your life in your hands, minus 80 out of 10. Well, there's nothing we could have done about that, except maybe have bought more heaters. But it was a Halloween-themed wedding, so it kind of added to the atmosphere, I suppose. I'm not sure I could ever have a wedding where it's not in the summer. It's just too risky, especially in England. I don't know where this wedding took place, but you know, you got to play the percentages. The food was late and cold, and their fryer kept tripping the power, so half of what we ordered didn't come out until most people had already finished eating, minus 100 out of 10. Luckily, we'd also provided a buffet, and there were cakes and desserts later, but it had been an important part of the day for me, so I'm gutted and I feel like a terrible host. That's not your fault though. I mean, that's okay. I know it didn't go your way, but you can't really look at yourself and be like, I effed up there. Those sort of things just happen. The Bluetooth connection on the speaker kept cutting out during the ceremony, so my entrance song and our walking out music kept starting and stopping. That's minus 10 out of 10. Kind of funny, but annoying, and I wished our coordinator had thought to fix it between the entrance and exit, although she was great otherwise, and I'm sure mitigated many other disasters I wasn't even aware of. My horrible racist uncle came, despite not being invited. I had no idea he was even there until during the meal when I looked down the table. He didn't even have a place setting. That's 1 out of 10. Annoying, but he didn't actually do anything or even say a word to my husband or me. One of our guests had a mental breakdown and was crying, running around and saying all kinds of weird, dark, horrible stuff. My husband and 2 of my bridesmaids spent hours trying to calm her down and find out where she was staying so that we could get her in a taxi home. That I rate minus 500 out of 10. It didn't actually involve me that much, but it really stressed my beautiful fella out and ended his night sourly. That probably is the most annoying thing so far. I mean, look, I'm never going to blame someone having a mental breakdown, but if it's your wedding day and you're having to deal with that, it's just not what you want at all. Honestly, if I was the husband, I would have got someone else to deal with it and try to enjoy the day. Well, that day is about you. And then finally, my husband's horrible aunt was horrible and heckled him during his gorgeous speech. Imagine getting heckled during a wedding speech. That is shocking. Minus 200 out of 10. There's always at least one, and my husband was upset. A pox upon her. Honestly, there are probably more I'm forgetting. There were times when I was sure I was going to wake up from the worst dream ever. I'm furious at myself, hugely disappointed and really upset that all that money, over 15k, and time didn't pay off in the way I'd imagined. But I am trying my best to focus on the positives. My wonderful friends and family who showed up for me in so many ways. The fact that everyone seemed to really enjoy the band and the dancing and the decor, and most of all my incredible husband who has been faultlessly kind, patient, calm and caring throughout it all. If nothing else, all this has proved to me exactly why I've married him. Please say kind things or tell me your horror stories below to make me feel better. Top comment on that one, sorry to hear, but sounds like your husband passed the test of remaining with you in a strong way during tough times. It's painful now, but you'll have a lot of stories to tell in the future. All the best ahead. There we go, that is the exact sort of comment that OP needed, and it's a great one as well. I mean, listen, don't get me wrong, I'd be absolutely fuming. I mean, like, your wedding day as a couple is one of the biggest days you're ever going to have, obviously, in your life. And for it to go as badly as that, it's going to leave a sour taste. Of course it is. However, look at it on the bright side, and maybe that's easier to say than do, but in the coming years, give it a decade, you're going to have the best wedding story to tell, because nobody wants to hear about the same old wedding that was beautiful and everyone got on really well and there was no drama. Where's the fun in that story? Yeah, it might be what you wanted, but there's no fun in retelling it. So at least you've got a different sort of wedding story to tell. All right, now let's head over to r/justknowmother-in-law, the home of some of the very best wedding drama stories on the internet. Mother-in-law in the wild. Nature destroys wedding. Mother-in-law destroys bride. This is the tale from when I learned firsthand how a person could be more destructive than a force of nature. My then fiance and I were looking for venues for our wedding, and on this day we were looking into different places. There's this mega park in the middle of the city where they have a lot of different options for all budgets, and some weddings were taking place that day, so we had a first-hand experience of the options. There was the simple outdoor, some great indoor ones, and the top of the cake, an old industrial metallurgic oven that is now a museum and is the most spectacular wedding place once all the details are added. Of course, it's expensive as heck. Really, you need to have a lot of money to have your wedding here, and it's basically the top notch. Well, the wind was hitting hard that day, and we arrived at one of the cheaper locations, outdoor, next to an artificial river. And that is when the destruction begun. The wind started to hit, and the huge tent that covered the place began to move and shake. More wind, and finally, a structural failure occurred. The whole structure started to fall apart. Locks were destroyed, nets shattered, and then the final blow destabilized everything and it collapsed over the tables. Glasses and plates shattered, chairs and tables were thrown apart, the musical stage collapsed, and everything went to hell. It was disaster, unsalvageable. Groomsmen and some early guests started to arrive, less than 7 people, if I recall correctly. I guess the coordinator went to Red Alert and called the groom and bride to notify of the disaster and see other options, because they arrived a few minutes later in a little open roof transport, like golf carts. The groom jumped to action and went with the coordinator to see options. The bride was shocked and teary, sitting in the car. I stopped taking pictures here because I approached to see if I could help carry stuff to a backup venue or something like that. That is when the mother-in-law arrived, and that is when I discovered the power of the mother-in-law in the tornado scale. She was livid. Red face, pumped eyes, she descended from her own car and started yelling to everyone. And then she saw the bride, still teary, on the edge of collapsing, looking hopelessly to the deformed and collapsed tent. It was almost like those nature documentals, when the predator spots the weakest member and goes for the kill. She screamed, spitted, and threw her hands in the air and blamed the bride. Blamed her for choosing the venue, for the date, for the wind, for all the, quote, pain being inflicted on the family. And the bride lost it and crumbled to cry. Cart driver became the hero here and just drove away with the bride to stop the savagery. I decided to leave as fast as possible, feeling what I think is shame and disgust for this woman. There were a few drops of rain that started to fall, and the electric equipment for the band was exposed, and some of the staff and me were rushing to protect it, which is how I witnessed this conclusion. The groom and coordinator arrived no more than 3 minutes later with the most amazing rescue plan since Dunkirk. They got an automatic crisis upgrade, free of charge, to the top notch, the top of the cake, the museum, the only venue available with protection from the weather to save this wedding. The groom was jubilant, looking for the bride, but she was nowhere to be found. He asked what happened. One of the groomsmen started to tell him, and then the mother-in-law jumped to her car and escaped in that instant. The groom started to go red, then very red, then white when he started to look for the bride. And then love happened, and he chose who he had to find first, and he ran to find the bride instead of his mum, so I knew who the important person for him was. Well, that's good at least. This actually ends as a normal story. It could have been a Christmas miracle story if the mother-in-law had shut it for 4 minutes total. It would have been a glorious ending with the groom saving the day and a spectacular wedding and everyone happy. But the mother-in-law had become a force of destruction and she tore the bride apart. Yeah, I know, mother-in-laws can be worse than a force of nature. Wow, who knew? Turns out mother-in-laws can be as destructive, if not more destructive than, well, I don't want to say a tornado or a hurricane, but very strong wind that can destroy a wedding. Insane. And I think the point from OP is right. Like, if she just waited 4 minutes and just maybe even tried to help and come up with a solution, it could have been like the best story ever. As OP says, genuinely a Christmas miracle. Like, you know, from the depths of despair to them being upgraded, I presume free of charge, into one of the nicest wedding venues you could possibly dream to have. Would have been amazing. But no, she ruined it. And I feel like even though I hope this ended up being a great day for the bride and groom, the bride's never going to fully be able to forget how she felt in that instant and just the abuse that was coming at her from her mother-in-law to be, which is such a shame. But yeah, I hope that day wasn't tarnished for her by the mother-in-law, but I feel like it probably was. Okay, now last but not least, of course, this is the story you've been waiting for. The most upvoted wedding story on Reddit ever. The white dress. This story is about my friend's mother-in-law and her wedding. Strap in, guys, this is a wild ride in which I did the thing that got me banned from any of her family functions. Plus a few threats of dismemberment and bodily harm. A good friend of mine from university was getting married. They'd been a couple since junior year of college, through her 2 years in the Peace Corps, and currently her return to this continent. 6 years in total. She'd been to all manner of family functions, and always came back with a strange story about how she thinks her mother-in-law secretly hates her. But being a very quiet and sweet person, she pushed those thoughts aside. Point 1. She is vegetarian and Jewish. Her husband is not. She was invited and went to Christmas dinner and figured she would just eat sides. As well, she also brought a vegetarian casserole. Her mother-in-law, after knowing her for 3 years and being told by her son a few weeks before about not to forget that my friend doesn't eat meat, proceeded to put meat in every dish. So my friend drank water and ate her casserole the whole night, while her mother-in-law cried to everyone that she was so rude for not eating her cooking. Anyways, back to the story. A few friends and I were asked to be at the wedding. My friend has a huge family, and so this was not going to be a small affair. Neither of them is particularly religious, but my friend said it would be nice to be married under a hoopah. Think an arbor, but 4 poles and covered with a white cloth and lots of flowers. My husband said he could care less and told her to go and rent one for the wedding. I was at the bridal shower when the mother-in-law found out that the pretty canopy was actually a hoopah. She almost lost her trash in front of a bunch of people, but managed to compose herself and laugh angrily that, quote, if the Jews were being represented, so would the Catholics. In my head, I heard a record screech. Guys, they aren't Catholic. So after much fighting, a lot of screaming, crying, threatening to pull money, which is funny because she contributed nothing, mother-in-law lost. The boot was firmly placed and nothing was moving it. Hoopah yes, Catholic priest no. Things then got stupid quiet. My friend texts me the night before the wedding that she has a bad feeling. I tell her it's probably just nerves. She's getting married. This is a big deal. Oh, how wrong I was. We all show up, get our hair and makeup done, slip into our bridesmaid dresses, and hang out waiting for the bride to be finished with her hair. She makes a comment saying she hadn't seen her mother-in-law all day and that she skipped her hair and makeup appointment. We all side-eyed each other, took a few sips of wine, and hoped the eerie feeling would go away. 30 minutes later, as we are helping the bride into her dress, guess who shows up? Well, If you guess mother-in-law, you win a cookie. Flushed from coming up the stairs, she's not a light woman, in full hair and makeup, and a white dress. Not ivory, not cream, full snow frickin' white. The dress was clearly a wedding dress. It was even from David's bridal, which she would later shout at me. Floor-length satin with a sweetheart beaded top, a bit of a train and off-white lace on the bottom. The dress was even tailored to her. This has been a long con she's orchestrated. The bride burst into tears, and aunts and friends ushered the mother-in-law out. We did our best to console the bride. We touched up her makeup, and I made her a promise that the dress would never be seen in a photo. She looked me dead in the eye and nodded. The game was on. The venue only supplied white wine and champagne for the wedding party, but I grabbed my purse and ran down into the reception area and managed to flag an attendant by the bar and bribe him with a cool $20 to give me a bottle of red early. I cracked the baby open, filled a solo cup to the brim with it, and I stalked outside. After a few swigs from the bottle for courage, I went over to where everyone was getting ready to take photos. With one last hard stare at my friend, I got her nod of approval. I pulled out my phone, held it in front of my face like I was reading a text, and walked straight into mother-in-law. I poured the entire cup of red wine down the front of her dress, jumped back, and gasped. The look on her face was murderous. She screamed, yelled, threatened, and promised she would sue me. People had to hold her back because she wanted to fight me. Eventually, she switched from screaming to sobbing, and she sank to the ground and threw a tantrum on the floor. Everyone moved back and just let her go at it and walked away to go take photos. It was surreal, as if everyone just hit their limit and noped out from around her. The 12-year-old flower girl whipped out her phone and snapped a few photos, much to our amusement. This is already super long, but I will say that mother-in-law went home and changed, only 20 minutes from the venue, into a nice dark green, too small and low-cut dress. Because of this, she missed all the photos. The wedding was beautiful. I got death glares from everyone she told that I attacked her with wine, but no Fs were given as I drank and danced with friends. The bride thanked me in secret and 3 months later took me to the spa for a day of pampering. But I am officially, quote, that ISIS C word to mother-in-law. And I'll take that with pride. So there we have it. I hope that was worth the wait. The most upvoted story on Reddit ever about a crazy wedding. And that was definitely crazy. Wow. Once again, all I can say is what a woman the mother-in-law was. Just going into the comments down below. Apparently it's chupa or chopper, not hooper, which is like a Jewish sort of thing at a wedding. Sort of, I think it's like a I don't know how to describe it. Can I put a picture on screen? Probably can. Looks cool anyway. If you're listening on an audio platform, I'm sorry. All right, I'm sorry. But yeah, not a hooper, a chupa or a chopper. Who knows? Doesn't really matter. Yeah, what you did in that OP was actually just class. Like taking it upon yourself to just be like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. I'm going to make things right for my friend, the bride, and screw over this mother-in-law. Phenomenal scenes, well done. So there we have it. Those are 4 of the craziest wedding stories ever posted on Reddit. Really hope you enjoyed. If you did, let me know in the comments down below if you like this different sort of style to my normal stuff. More themed stories all packaged together. And yeah, I will really take your comments on board if you want to see something like this again. So please do, even if you never do normally comment, get in the comments and say whether you liked it or not. How about this? Just write a number out of 10. How much did you like it? And if you want to see it again, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you very much, and I will catch you guys on the next one. If you do want more, by the way, I've left another wedding story on screen right here, so check that one out. But yeah, subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on, and I will catch you on the next one.